Hello, welcome to another video. Today we are wrapping up the books I read in September. Not gonna lie, I was super slumpy in September and I think I'm out of it, maybe? But I pretty much did not feel motivated to pick up a book throughout most of the month of September. I did pick up books, but I just lost the reading motivation. I thankfully read 3 books in one night because I did a fun challenge video where I wanted to see how much I could read in one night. There's a link up here to that. But I just was super slumpy. So this is a 6-book slumpy wrap up. So the first book that I read is V.E. Schwab's Extraordinary. This is a graphic novel set in the Villain series and I'm so excited to be back in this world. This is a world in which people who have had a near-death experience can have magical abilities form that are based on the last thoughts they had before this incident occurred. So we follow a new character, Charlotte, in this book who has had this incident and her abilities are starting to manifest, and she realises that she is in danger and is trying to protect herself, and also gets involved in this new group of people that she's met that also have these abilities. I love any kind of ability-based magic system in which we see people with different abilities and those abilities have like reasons for forming. As a kid I absolutely loved X-Men. I love it still now because they all have these different abilities, and that is definitely I think one of the reasons I love this series so much. I loved seeing this in graphic novel format, seeing these characters drawn out when they've been in my head for so long. Certainly different to necessarily the way I would have imagined them, however it's still really cool. We get an Eli Victor origin story in graphic novel format in the middle of this, which is really awesome to see. It was just really fun being back in this world. I am really excited to read more from this and just maybe do a Villains reread because that series is just so good. If you haven't read that duology, I would highly recommend it. Really enjoyed this and gave it 4.5 out of 5 stars. Then I read The Hedge Witch by Carrie Thomas. This is a novella set before the events of Threadneedle, which is a really fantastic contemporary fantasy book circling around a group of young witches who have formed a coven. So this is following Rowan, who is one of those young witches, but this is before the events of that book. I think this is a really good way of doing this because we already know Rowan as a character. We have got to know her through Threadneedle. Obviously this is before Threadneedle, so we know a slightly different version of Rowan, but I think when books are this tiny they can often fall prey to the fact that they're not long enough for us to get to know the character. However, we already know the characters, so I think this worked really well. This takes place over the summer holidays and we see Rowan finding out a little bit more about her magic, meeting more people with different types of magic and just kind of expanding her horizons really. Obviously there is a slight threat that plays part into it, and I think that it was really well balanced in that it had the right amount of action but also the right amount of kind of cozy, wholesome feels and just getting to know Rowan a bit more. I really liked being back in this world and I gave this one 4 out of 5 stars. Then I read Ms. Ice Sandwich by Meiko Kawakami. This is again very short. These 3 that I've just spoken about are all ones that I read within that cozy evening reading vlog, so they were all easy kind of ones to get through because of the length of them in one night. This is a fleeting sad story following a young boy who becomes quite infatuated with the woman working on the sandwich counter in his local supermarket. He really loves going to see her, he makes it something he looks forward to doing, and we see the struggles as life kind of gets in the way of him doing this, and there's some quite sad things that are happening in his life that are kind of preventing this and almost forcing him to have to change and grow in a little bit, and I just found it quite emotional and quite sad, and I think that it was very fleeting of a kind of story of like looking back at youth and the innocence there and how this boy was going through all of these things that were happening to him and he didn't want it to be happening, he just wanted things to stay the same. It felt really sad. This one I think did fall prey a little bit to short book syndrome in that we didn't really get to know the characters enough. So whilst I certainly did have those moments where I was feeling all the emotions for these characters, I think if it had been a bit longer we would have got that kind of fleshed out nature to them and got a bit more from them, but I still really liked it and I gave it 3.5 out of 5 stars. Then I moved on to Juno Dawson's Her Majesty's Royal Coven. This is one that I'd heard a lot of good things about. I was really excited to read this one. This follows 4 witches as children in the first chapter and then becoming adults for the rest of the book, and we see them as kids initially and forming this little friendship group and how they have this bond together, and then we see them as adults and how that's kind of changed, where the rifts have formed, where the bonds are still secure. It's really interesting already from that point because even though you only get 1 chapter of them as children, you feel very attached to them and feel like you want to see that they've still got this kind of closeness as adults, and I think it's brilliantly done because it does show that when you're a kid you kind of think that you're going to have this kind of everlasting bond, or you're potentially going to have your life go in one direction, it goes in another direction, and I think this definitely depicts the realness of how growing up isn't always quite as fun as maybe you think it would be, or doesn't work out in quite the way you think it will be, and I think that this definitely shows that very well. It's really hard to review this one without going to spoilers, and I won't, this is spoiler free obviously, but there is a big part of this plot that is not in the blurb, and I don't want to give that away for anybody because it was so powerfully done, and I think this book is filled with that powerful emotion feeling, and it feels a very intense read, but in like the very best way a book can be intense. And I don't want to say more in case I accidentally spoil it. So I would definitely say pick this one up if you've got it on your TBR. When I finished it, I had to just kind of sit for a minute because of how much had happened and how much it made me feel. And I think when you can feel the emotions that the characters themselves in this book are feeling, I think that that shows that the book has done a really fantastic job of creating characters that feel incredibly real with incredibly real emotions. I really liked it. I gave it 4.5 out of 5 stars. Then I moved on to a couple of Kindle reads to try and secure me out of this slump, because at this point, having read these 4 other books, I was still feeling incredibly slumpy. So then I read The Score by Elle Kennedy. This is book 3 out of 4 books in the Off-Campus series. So each book follows a different couple on a university campus. They are all in the same kind of friendship group, and this is the 3rd book in that series, so we're following our 3rd couple. So by this point I've kind of established the format of these books, and not gonna lie, they're kind of carbon copies of each other. Like, the plot doesn't differ that much, but you're not really reading these books for the plot or the writing. They are not the best written things ever. There's certainly moments where I'm like, but they're very fun, they're very smutty, they have a lot of sex positivity, they're breaking the taboo about talking about certain things, and I love it, and I really like that it does that. They're just really nice, easy reads. I went for these books when I was slumpy before, and I've come back to this book now that I'm feeling slumpy again. I'm excited to keep going with this series. I have one left in this, what is it called if there's 4 books? A quadrilogy. I don't know. In this 4 book series I have one left, and then there is, I think, one additional like 0.5 extra book where you get to see where they ended up, which I've heard isn't as good. However, I feel invested. I want to know where they've ended up after university. Out of the 2 love interests, the man in this one I didn't like necessarily. He was quite arrogant and very, very full of himself, and I didn't really enjoy that. I don't like that as a trait generally. The woman, however, was fantastic. She was so sex positive, and the types of things she was talking about, I just loved reading about it, and I really liked her. I think she's probably my favourite of the 3 women we've met so far, so I really, really liked reading about her. She was really good. The ending has left me very much wanting to read the 4th book, so I'm thinking I'll probably try and get to that one relatively soon. It's difficult to give these anything above a 3.5 star because whilst they're really good fun and I enjoy reading them, the plot is nothing particularly amazing, the writing is nothing particularly amazing, they're just a fun time. So yeah, 3.5 stars for this one. And then I read 13 by Steve Kavanagh. This book, this got me out of my reading slump. Oh, it's so good. I literally just finished it last night, so I'm kind of still in the zone of finishing that book because, wow, it was a brilliant thriller. It follows, the kind of tagline for it is, the murderer isn't on trial, he's in the jury. So we follow a split narrative. We have the murderer, who's in the jury of this murder case, and then we have the lawyer who is trying to defend the person who has been accused, wrongfully accused of this murder. It's quite a high profile case. We get told the story in such a clever way because at no point do you think one has the high ground over the other. Even though you're getting a dual narrative perspective, you don't think that either has the high ground, and you as the reader also don't feel like you have the high ground. This book constantly kept me guessing. Each narrator had very clever things up their sleeve that you didn't entirely get revealed until much nearer to the end of the book. There were so many reasons that this book kept me guessing, and so many reasons this book kept me unsure of who to trust and what the truth was. I just think it was brilliant. It really, really gripped me. Very short not paragraphs, very short chapters, which just meant that it was even more compelling, and I really, really loved it. It is part of a series. I didn't know that when I picked it up. I just had it on my Kindle, so I wasn't aware of that going in. It didn't affect the reading for me. It does mean I want to read more of this series now. I've heard that 50/50, I think it's called, is a really good one to go for next. A lot of people have recommended that to me. So I am very excited to keep going with this author because this one, it was just really, really good. My only flaw is that where this was incredibly clever throughout the whole thing, there were certain aspects when it came to the people accusing in the court trial that felt silly and less cleverly tied together, and I guess that was kind of to try and demonstrate the arrogance that they had and their kind of Icarus, flying too close to the sun nature that they had. But it just, at times it felt a little clumsy with what they were kind of getting at, and the way it was strung together just felt a little silly sometimes there, which for me felt a little bit jarring. But I think that other than that, it was brilliant. And I think because of that jarring thing, it just about lost out on a 5-star read for me, because I just found myself questioning certain aspects there, but it was a 4.5 out of 5 stars, so pretty close. So that is all the books I read in September. I'm very, very excited for October's month of reading, because I always tend to read more in October, so I'm really hoping I can continue to do that this year, because obviously been super slumpy, but I have a lot of books I'm excited to read in October. We have Spoopathon in October, which I'm really excited about. I'm on Team Harpies as a team captain with Jade, so I'm really hyped for that. I also, this weekend, if you're watching this when the videos come out, or basically the first weekend of October, I am doing a Patreon readathon. Not too late to take part if you did want to, if you're watching this as the video's gone up live, but it's basically available to all my patrons, and we're doing a 48-hour readathon for the first weekend of October, so that's going to be really good. I'm hoping I'm going to read quite a lot then. I'm just excited to get going with everything that I want to read in October. I didn't do a fictionary TBR for October because I wanted to do, obviously, Spoopathon, and the prompts are dropped throughout the month, so I thought I would just do Spoopathon as a TBR and not really set a set one, but just have a group of books that I know I wanted to pick from. So looking forward to all of that. Thank you so much for watching this super tiny wrap up. I do hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please do give it a thumbs up. Let me know how many books you read in the month of September. You can also subscribe to see more of my face on your feed, and link down below you will find a link to my online shop and also my Patreon, where, as I said, you can sign up to join the readathon if you would like, available to all tiers. I also do lots of regular live shows, podcast, book club, Discord, lots of different things. It's a good time. Thank you so much for watching. Keep smiling and stay positive.